very clear messaging has been going on at the moment there, that there is zero tolerance for the anti-military voices. Because when Pakistan was created, this was the only institution which they inherited in an organized structure form. The foreign reserves dipped down to below 3 billion. Which country do you have military generals sitting and saying that we'll raise fund from the country? Where will you see? You see that in India happening? And we haven't recognized the Taliban regime. For that matter, no one has recognized it.
No one has.
Even Pakistan, who got them into power, also hasn't recognized them. You have a new normal where our insurgent movement, a terrorist organization has actually become a functional government.
The current dynamics in Pakistan and Afghanistan is a complex one. There are political and leadership issues that in turn lead to other critical problems. That is why I bring to you Dr Shalini Chawla, a distinguished fellow from Center for Air Power Studies, New Delhi, is an esteemed expert specializing in India's relation with South Asia. Let's uncover the ongoing crisis in Pakistan with Dr Shalini Chawla. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here today. It's a pleasure interacting with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Shivam.
I would like to understand from you your passion about research and South Asian studies for that matter.
Firstly, I was always very much into reading and writing as a student, and then political science, international studies always fascinated me. And as I kind of started to explore that what I need to do related to this field, think tanks was the natural path. While I was exploring and when I started my journey, this was also the year when Kargil happened. Because my first job I started in Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses in 1999. So Kargil was in the air and we had all these discussions going on, and it was everything was happening in front of you, where I really wanted to now do this and focus on national security. And then I entered into this field, and the initial writings were more about the larger perspectives of general security, United Nations, but then I started focusing on Pakistan, and that was one of the main drivers towards that was my mentor, who's no more, Air Commodore Jasjeet Singh, who was heading IDSA at that time. And he kind of encouraged me to work on Pakistan, because he said that we need scholarship, and this is an area where we have been, engaged in a conflict for many decades, and the way the conflict it doesn't look like that it's going to resolve soon. So this is something you need to study. And so that's how I started working on Pakistan. And then Afghanistan obviously is naturally close to Pakistan. This was another area that I picked up and started working on that. And that's how kind of, my journey went on.
Right.
And here I am following Pakistan
Beautiful.
Day and night now.
As someone who closely follows Pakistan and what they're doing, there are a lot of issues pertaining to their nation at the moment. Which ones do you think are the most important ones?
So, this is actually a very interesting question, that what is the most important one. So right now what we see is Pakistan is in the middle of it's in the middle of multiple challenges.
Right.
Because we see the situation and the dynamics unfolding in a very, although the crisis is not new for Pakistan, we have seen repeated crises in Pakistan. It's the state, and I always, when I talk to people, I always kind of say that as a student, when I used to attend the seminars and conferences, they used to be titled in 1998-99, is Pakistan a failing state? Will Pakistan survive? And now we are in 2023, the same questions are being asked. So this is something which is being asked repeatedly for Pakistan. Now what you are asking, what is distinct, is what I'm understanding. What is happening right now. So we have challenged it at multiple levels, but broadly, if one has to see, maybe we can classify them into three broad challenges: political, economic, security. Also international relations, which became difficult area for them, which have been relatively a comfortable journey. So politically, what we have seen in Pakistan, this is a classic cycle of, which of events that we have seen for decades in Pakistan. So military obviously is in power of major decision making. A guy from the political domain comes into power with the blessings of the military. He becomes the prime minister. And then within 2 to 3 years, what you see is that the ego of the political leader starts to grow. There are clashes. He starts to call the so-called unwritten red lines, which are there. And then we see the conflict between the military and the political leader. And then before the leaders, finishes his tenure, we see that he's out of power, and the next person is picked up who military feels will be more in sync with to their interests, and he's got into power. So this is not anything.
It's become
different.
A cycle now.
It's a cycle. And Imran Khan, I don't know if you followed the 2018 elections. All statistics at that time, 2 months before the elections, were suggesting that Nawaz Sharif's party is going to win and he's going to come into power. But then Imran Khan was the blue-eyed guy for the military. He started this whole narrative about Naya Pakistan, and he's going to be there, the youth icon. He's a guy who doesn't carry any corruption baggage, because Nawaz Sharif and the Zardari families have this history of stealing the so-called wealth of the people. And here is this clean guy who has just come into picture. Military likes him, and he is going to change the destiny of Pakistan.
Right.
Then there was a lot of appeal for Imran Khan. In fact, there is an appeal for Imran Khan even now. The opinion polls which have happened in Pakistan, they show that he's still the most popular leader. And then Imran Khan, in fact, 2018 elections, when Imran Khan came into power, the Pakistani press itself was calling the elections as Selection 2018, because it was already decided that he's going to be, and there were all kind of tactics which happened, which are not new in Pakistan in terms of getting him to win the election. He comes into power, but one that he never had actually the experience of governance as such. So that was lacking in Imran Khan. But also there was this, now we had these strains developing between Imran Khan and the military. And these were his incapability to even manage the economy. He did not adhere to the IMF conditionalities of reducing subsidies, which created problems for them with IMF later. The major strains started to surface when Faiz Hamid, who was the ISI head, who was very close to Imran Khan, and military was very uncomfortable about this factor, about he being very close to the political leadership. There was a change from him, and then General Bajwa appointed Nadeem Anjum as the ISI head, and Faiz Hamid had to move away. I mean, he had to be shifted from that position. And then there was this resistance from Imran Khan to not allowing that whole transition, and he wanted Faiz Hamid to be there, and that developed. That was like the beginning. And then there were multiple issues. For example, Imran Khan, during his tenure, relationship with Saudis suffered a blow, which is naturally considered a very valuable relationship by the Pakistan military and people.
Financial as well.
So he kind of started talking about the fact that I'm going to create a parallel alliance with Malaysia and Turkey because Saudis have not taken Kashmir at the OIC forum. Then he went to United States, and they had tensions with US, which were escalated because he was openly blaming United States for what's happening in Pakistan. I mean, that Pakistan has suffered terrorism because of United States. The economy is in bad shape because of United States. So there were these multiple combination of factors that we saw, which ultimately ended into a no confidence motion, because of which he had to leave. But then what was more significant, his leaving was not, it was a process that we have seen many times. But what Pakistan had not seen before that was, after Imran Khan left, his street power, the way he kind of conducted processions and jalsas and the whole anti-establishment sentiment and anti-US sentiment, which was now all out on the streets with Imran Khan heading that, that was different. And that's where what we saw, that there was deep polarization in the society between now supporters of Imran Khan and not people who don't support him. In the institutions, even now you see judiciary playing a very dubious role. So institutions, people, even within the military, he had a big support system. That's how he survived for so long. His street power, and then he openly challenging the military, calling them traitor, corrupt. He even called Bajwa Mir Jafar. Something like that is very unheard of in Pakistan. We have never heard things like that. So this was something which was different. Tarnishing of the military's image to this extent. And then finally, we will not go into details here, but the entire cycle, we saw the finale happening on May 9th, where we had this violent incidents. And that is when we see military now completely taking charge. In fact, that's what in May 9th actually united Pakistan military. And that provided the rationale for the use of force.
Right.
And now we saw very strong punitive actions being taken against the civilians, as well as the military officers who were involved in the May 9th protest. So very clear messaging has been going on at the moment there, that there is zero tolerance for the anti-military voices.
I see.
That's what we see right now in Pakistan. That's about the political crisis, where now Nawaz Sharif is back. Because they need Nawaz Sharif. He has an appeal in Punjab. They need to win back Punjab because Imran won Punjab, and that's if some of you know, this is very acceptable fact there, that if you win Punjab in Pakistan, you've won Pakistan.
Right.
Because more than 50% of the General Assembly seats are in Punjab. So Nawaz Sharif has that clout, and military believes that he can get the following back and he should be able to swing the elections towards the PMLN.
What I understand from this, what you said was that the major problem is because of the leadership. And there's a cycle between the leadership and the military.
And the military.
So what could change to stop the cycle and become a better nation in terms of financials and the leadership for that matter?
So leadership, I mean, we are obviously no one to suggest here what Pakistan, how can they change? That's up to Pakistan to decide. We can only see the cycle, and the cycle is there. It's maybe, you know, the history will take you back and talk about lack of leadership, weak leadership. But one of the main factors has been a very, very dominant military, which drives the entire narrative of the nation. I would say misplaced national priorities in Pakistan. Because military is in the dominant position and they hold the major decision making, the national priorities in Pakistan are not like a normal country.
Right.
The national priorities of Pakistan are to be at par with India militarily, in the nuclear arsenal. The national priority is to highlight the narrative of Kashmir. The national priority is to militarize the nation, to have the military capability even at the cost of social and economic development.
But that will never be sustainable for a nation.
But that is the reason. Those are some of the very critical factors for Pakistan to be where they are right now. So those priorities have not changed, and I don't see them changing. So, and I don't, the kind of structure we have right now, I don't see a political leader who can potentially exert himself, assert himself and create that position to change, because they will never have that kind of power.
What would need to change though?
So even today, the critical, whoever comes into power, there are very clear lines of critical strategic decision making in which any civilian leadership cannot interfere. And those are, for example, defense budget and procurement. It's not like in democracy you have the civilian leadership exercising control on that. In Pakistan, it is a completely military's domain. Nuclear doctrine and strategy and arsenal, completely military's domain. And relations with India and Afghanistan also remain military's domain. So critical decision makings, the civilian leadership is never able to assert itself. Even their alliances, the major alliances for Pakistan today, you would say, is China and United States, right? Both the relationships. China started as a completely military relationship. In 1960, 63, when they signed the Shaks-Kam Valley Agreement, when the strategic partnership, I would say, institutionalized, it was a purely military relationship for decades. 2013, we had the economic aspect coming there when CPEC was signed with Nawaz Sharif, and we had that dimension coming in. But CPEC has a very strong strategic dimension also, because India has been resisting it, and it goes through the POK. And then we have a very strong diplomatic aspect of that alliance coming in now. With the Americans, similarly, the relationship that became a military ally. Pakistan became a military ally of United States in late 50s and 60s, when it became member of SEATO and CENTO. And in the 1980s, with the Soviets coming into Afghanistan, it became the frontline state. Again, it was a purely military relationship. And also after post 2001. Now we see a difference in that relationship. Right. That you don't have the security dimension with the US at the moment, and the relationship is talking more about non-traditional security threats cooperation. But Pakis are very keen to have the security dimension back in the relationship. And we had the Pakistan Army Chief visiting US, and there is a effort from Pakistan to get the security dynamics back there, because that's what the military would want. So where have these alliances benefited a common man there? Some major decision making, even at that front. For example, you see Pakistan's strategic location is just brilliant.
It is.
It can have a wonderful transit economy. It's a beautiful connector, and it can really leverage that situation. But because of the fact that the focus from the military side has been so much on the build-up and the arsenal and controlling of the civilian decision making, that has never been able to be utilized for the benefit of whole larger perspective that we would see. Even for that matter, managing of their neighborhood, Afghanistan. Afghanistan is just next to them. They have lots of problems right now with Afghanistan. Even after they thought that they are going to be having a smooth right now with Taliban coming into power, because they were traditionally their strategic assets, and they have had this big victory. It's not happened. The entire management of Afghanistan, one of the major drivers has been that to deny India space in Afghanistan. That's been one of the major drivers. I'm not saying that's the only factor. There are other factors also which we can talk. But one of the major factors for the whole Afghan strategy has been to keep India out of Afghanistan. The others are obviously for them to neutralize the nationalistic fervor there on the borders, the disputed Durand line. So, kind of having a regime in Afghanistan which would accept Pakistan's take on the Durand line, also not allow the Pashtun nationalism to be growing with Afghanistan support. So those have been factor, but not allowing India there has been a big factor. When you have a military-run state, the whole vision with which you run the country becomes very different from a democratic. India is the prime example, where you are doing things for people and not for a particular institution. That's the difference here.
I would like to further break it down, ma'am, to understand the transition of power to a military power. When did that happen?
That happened from the beginning, actually. From the beginning. I would say, a lot of people say it happened at the time when, the first coup happened in Pakistan. But I say that military was always a very powerful institution. Because when Pakistan was created, this was the only institution which they inherited in an organized structure form. Other institutions they had to create.
True.
And they could not create that. And they did not have the leadership. Jinnah died, Liaquat Ali Khan died. So those factors are there. But that consensus to create institutions wasn't there. Even to come to a consensus on a constitution, it took them more than about 7 years to come to that conclusion, consensus on building a constitution. But the only organization which was always in a structured form was the military. And then obviously, as the situation developed, first they came into power, and as they came into the power, they developed economic stakes there. At the moment, Pakistan military has high economic stakes in the country. I don't know, people would know it, but that's the organization which runs everything in Pakistan. From airlines to hotels to schools.
Is it?
Yeah, they have a big corporate industry where military is involved. So larger tenures of political power gave them space to expand themselves in the economic side. And now when you have that, the reversal is just impossible. Even in terms of the budget, it is for a country, the kind of military buildup they had, the kind of nuclear arsenal buildup that they have is quite significant. So now I feel that the grip is too deep.
What's the structure like for decision making in the military in Pakistan?
For decision making would be for different types, Shivam, and I wouldn't have the...
If you say there's one sole person, sole identity...
I would say it's the army chief and the ISI chief. Now, it depends on what decision, where it would vary, but you can't kind of pinpoint. But Pakistan army chief, I feel he's the most powerful man in the country, is what I would see as an Indian. And even now, if you come to the situation now when Pakistan is undergoing a major economic crisis, the foreign reserves dipped down to below 3 billion. It's come up now with the money that they've got from the IMF and other resources. Then the devaluation of the Pakistani rupee has been significant, less than 50%. Inflation now it's about 30%, but it went up to close to 40%. And it was such a struggle for them to get the IMF loan. This has never happened, how they struggled so hard, because there was a breach of trust with the IMF, which they felt that they did not adhere to the conditions which were agreed upon. And then they got the IMF loan, those $3 billion, and money from the UAE and Saudi Arabia came in, 2 billion from there, 1 billion from Saudi Arabia. Chinese did the loan rollovers. We don't know the exact structure of the Chinese assistance, but I would say roughly about what I could understand was $5 billion of assistance came from the Chinese. So now the reserves have gone up. Inflation is about 30%, but still it's very high. And then even with this, what are the answers that the military has come up with? There's more centralization of power. There's a SIFC which has been created, which is Special Investment Facilitation Council, where military has got even a more institutionalized role in this organization is basically to expedite the foreign investment without the bureaucratic hurdles. I'm just saying it in simple terms. The council has the representation from the army, military, from obviously the civilian bureaucracy and political leadership, but military is a part of it. Which country do you have military generals sitting and saying that we'll raise fund from the country? Where will you see? Do you see that in India happening? What is the capability that you have to raise funds? But it's there. Defense budget, for that matter, that's one of the defense budget where there is no transparency. There's zero transparency.
I was going to ask you that what do you think is the percentage of the defense allocation?
So that's and then you have more important part about the Pakistan defense budget is that the procurement of the major equipment is not part of the budget.
Is it?
It's not part of the budget. Large number of equipment anyway is coming from China, which what is happening inside you will never get to know the details there. But the Chinese equipment is facilitated to Pakistan on very different and easy loan structures that facilitates, because the Chinese whole objective of giving equipment to Pakistan or modernizing their military is not about economy or selling the equipment. It's about a strategic objective. It's about making Pakistan militarily strong to counter India. What brought Pakistan and China together was their common hostility against India. No matter how much the Pakistanis deny and say this is indigenous build-up, all reports suggest you that it could not have happened without the Chinese assistance. So the build-up and military build-up and nuclear build-up is for a different reason altogether, and that's why you have never in the history of Pakistan seen that the economic crisis is impacting this aspect. It doesn't impact. This goes on at a different pace.
Okay.
And other challenges will continue there. So this is a complex situation. You have a country with very strong military, but you see right now the security situation there. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or for that matter, Tehreek-e-Jihad, which is supposedly also an affiliate of this organization, is conducting series of attacks against the military installation. So large number of attacks have been there, and there has no action. I mean, there are reasons for why Pakistan military, in my mind, is not taking up the military operations right now because of the economic situation. Elections are about to happen. Then obviously those military operations will lead to even migration will take place when this displacement happens. Pakistan cannot afford all these things right now. And then how will they then manage Afghan Taliban who are supporting this TTP? Because Pakistan is holding the Afghan Taliban responsible for continuously facilitating the TTP or helping them out and not controlling them to target or strike, continue the terror strike there. They also feel that they have bases in Afghanistan. But then TTP and Afghan Taliban are ideological allies. So you cannot expect Afghan Taliban to act against them. So that's the tussle which is going right now. Well, let's see where it goes. But I think after elections, we will see counter-terror military operations happening in Pakistan. That's my assessment, because there is no other answer to this TTP problem. They've tried to talk. Incidentally, going back to where we started, one of the reasons which Imran Khan became unpopular was also because he was trying to have the peace talks with the TTP, and that didn't work out. And TTP, there is no way they are ready to negotiate and go the other way. So we will have this is a massive strenuous relationship that's there right now.
I would like to bring it back to China, ma'am, and I want to understand China's interest with Pakistan in building a relationship with Pakistan is solely for India, or there's other reasons as well?
So a prime factor, I would say, India. Also to manage, you say, US influence in the region. To control that influence, you need then have a presence in South Asia. Now, they stayed here, they launched CPEC, second phase has been launched, and now they're trying to talk to the other Nepal, they're trying to talk to Afghanistan, saying that, we'll extend BRI, CPEC to these countries. So it also kind of gives them a foothold, now expand themselves into the region. And also Chinese energy interests. There are multiple repercussions are there, and the Chinese, that's why, see, this is a very critical question that you're asking, because what happens that we repeatedly hear these instances about Chinese workers being targeted in Pakistan, Balochistan area, because they're managing water and there is a lot of resistance against the Chinese in that region. So we have had those instances there, that they have been targeted. Then also Chinese are, how much money can the Chinese give, and Chinese are arm twisting Pakistanis for their money. So we keep hearing those news, and repeatedly this is one of the questions which is being asked, that will this alliance sustain? But you have to understand that the alliance is much deeper. The alliance is not about economy, it's not about the money, it's the strategic objectives. Those will not change. Because what they are offering to each other, there's no substitute. For Pakistan, China is an indispensable ally. And for China, Pakistan is a very, very inexpensive option to counter India. of militarily making them strong, not questioning their covert actions in India, rather being a hurdle to India's efforts at the international level when we try to kind of bring any of those terrorists on the designated terrorist list. China is the first one to object that. Taking Kashmir at the UN Security Council forum. So now we see other aspects of, because China has also become much bigger, and so Pakistanis definitely would want to gain continuously from China's muscularity, I would say. So this alliance will, I don't see it changing.
But China, I think, is a smart nation that has been governed. And I think, do you feel that they feel insecure about India's power and the rise of India as a nation?
So you can sense the discomfort for sure. You can sense the discomfort in the Indo-Pacific strategy, what's happening, India being a very, very crucial player. You sense that discomfort from India's rise, the ability of India to kind of drive itself as the voice of global South, successful conduct of G20, our strategic partnership. All these factors are definitely making Chinese very uncomfortable. So that is definitely there. So this will go on, and India has to sustain the momentum of its rise. What I feel is India needs to manage its rise very well. We need to sustain.
True.
Everything what we are doing needs to be sustained and need to grow continuously. What we are doing is, I think we are doing perfectly fine. The challenge will be to just keep managing this, the pace, the momentum right now. Even South Asia, I would say that, India's neighborhood first policy sans Pakistan, which we have, I think it's working very well.
Coming back to Pakistan, you said that we are expected to have elections in Pakistan in February. What do you think should the people of Pakistan should be focusing on in this election?
I don't know how much of choice they would have, because, as I said, the most popular leader. First of all, what surprises me that Imran Khan is the most popular leader despite the fact that he did not prove anything when he was in, as a PM. Economy went down, although he claims that the economy was doing well, but then there were a number of mistakes that were made. But still, he's the most popular leader. Now, he is not going to be fighting the elections, is my assessment, that he is going to be kept out of the election scene. In fact, his whole political party has been completely diluted because the parallel party, IPP, which is Istikam Pakistan Party, was set up under Jahangir Tareen, and large number of PTI people have moved to this party. So there is, I don't know who is in PTI now, with Pakistan, Imran Khan and Qureshi dealing with the cipher case, and this party is not going to be occupying the political space. So it's primarily the PMLN and the PPP, Zardari's party, who's going to be Bhutto, who's going to be fighting for elections. But what people need to do, I think they have to ask themselves. But right now, what I can gauge with what's happening right now, that all efforts that we see are in the direction which will are getting towards strengthening of the PMLN and getting them a larger stake in the. It will be a coalition party, a coalition government, is my assessment. But I think where PMLN will be in a stronger position. So that's the situation that we see right now. But it's Pakistan; anything can change anytime. So
earlier you said that the budget in Pakistan is not transparent. The defense budget.
Yeah.
But do you have a particular number that you think this is the allocation of their financial budget in terms of the development?
That is transparent. How much they do on defense is transparent. But the categories and divisions like Indian defense budget have, that's not there.
Can you give me a number?
You don't have the. So right now it will be, I think it's about 1.8% of the GDP.
Is it?
But then the GDP itself is in minus, right? So the GDP itself is very, very low right now, GDP growth. But then there have been times when we have seen during Zia's time, for example, the defense budget was 6% of the GDP. So we have had a very high figure being spent. But the division, when I said transparency, was that you don't have a very clear cut division allocations as such in how much money is going there. That you don't get to see there. It's more like a military's domain, which is kept under there. It's not like a democratic country where they are accountable and need to share it with people that what they're doing. That is not there. So I meant that transparency when I talked about that. And that's a military domain in the sense that the civilian leadership doesn't have a say in that. It's a budget which is proposed and passed by them. So military leadership, civilian leadership doesn't typically have the power to question it. So that's what I meant in terms of the tightening of the control by the military. These are all reflections of the state which is run by the military. This is one of the reflections. So 1 or 2 points might not change, but when you see in totality, then you will realize that then the common man suffers, because what we are speaking right now, large part of our knowledge is from the Pakistani writings only. And they themselves, you have analysts there who have talked very openly about the fact that how excessive defense spending has led to, has been at the cost of neglect of spending at the social sectors. And that is what has, now Pakistan's human capital or what is happening inside Pakistan, that it's been a contributor to the economic strain in Pakistan.
Another sector which is an important part of a nation is the technological advancement. What do you think Pakistan, since you follow Pakistan closely, what do you think Pakistan is doing with the upcoming, there's so much technological advancement that's ongoing.
See, when the whole of economy is in doldrums, what do you expect on that side? Only technological advancement, which I feel has been non-stop, has been in the nuclear domain. There must be other, I'm sure advancement is taking place at some pace, but not something which could potentially take the country out of the crisis. You have to see in totality, what is the kind of change it will make to the whole nation. So that part I have not come across much, but I'm sure advancement at different levels is definitely happening. Do we see that reflecting in the growth? Or do we see that reflecting in the lives of people? We haven't seen that till now.
I see. Do you see any change in the relations between Afghanistan, Taliban and Pakistan?
There is a big change because, the Afghan Taliban, if we go back, the peace talks, supposedly the Doha talks which were happening, when Pakistan was taking the credit that they are the one who have got Taliban to the negotiating table and they are facilitating it, and it was on a high for that, taking the credit. And then finally Taliban, what happened there in the Doha talks, we did not have the representation from the democratic leadership, and whatever they came into power, US exit we saw, and Pakistan really celebrated the whole takeover, because in their own mind, years and years of whole struggle of them, Taliban coming into power and not having the democratic regime which would have a good relationship with India, something like a Karzai or Ghani later came. Because when we had these regimes, India was very, very engaged in Afghanistan. India till now exercises a very strong soft power there. We were working very closely with people. We are the largest aid provider to Afghanistan, close to $3 billion. Large number of developmental projects that we were conducting there. And then this whole triumph was there. And then in their own mind, things will just change and fall in sync as what Pakistan wanted. But then whatever Pakistan was thinking, the opposite happened. Taliban did not recognize the Pakistani version of the border. They resisted the fence that Pakistan had. There were tremendous skirmishes on the borders. And then the Pashtun nationalism was not being essentially controlled because Taliban came into the power. And Taliban welcomed the Indians. In fact, the Indian embassy was then opened last year. And when they opened the embassy also is what I got to know, that the embassy was in the right shape. There was no damage inside. And Taliban were welcoming that factor. And now we have a technical mission there which is taking care of the humanitarian
Okay.
relief. We haven't started any developmental projects there because that requires larger number of people going there, and we haven't recognized the Taliban regime. For that matter, no one has recognized the regime.
No one has.
Even Pakistan, who got them into power, also hasn't recognized them. And then this whole organization, Tehreek-e-Taliban, which Pakistan military had, actually targeted in their military operations, and in their own mind it had been nullified. We saw the resurgence of this organization. The resurgence happened, and they actually supported Taliban in fighting the Afghan security forces when the US exit was happening. And then Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which shares the same ideology as the Afghan Taliban, we saw a massive resurgence happening there. Resurgence because they are ultimately they are the two sides of the same coin. And in their own mind, if the Afghan Taliban can do it, they can also do it in Pakistan. You have a new normal where our insurgent movement or terrorist organization has actually become a functional government. It's a new normal in this world, right?
Yeah.
Our insurgent movement turns into a functional government of a
Right,
country.
right.
And then you have the TTP, who has the same ideology, same ambitions, and is getting the support from this. Why should they not take their whole ambition forward? I mean, that's the whole psychological part of it. And Afghan Taliban is obviously not controlling them, or to what extent they're supporting, I would not say here, but there is a support that's there, because you could see it in the number of attacks that are happening. And Pakistan has been very, this has led to major strains in the relationship. The strains have been so strong that it has reflected into a complete policy change by Pakistan. They decided to deport the Afghan refugees back to Pakistan, a large number. 1.7 million refugees have been deported back, which is adding to the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Also, we read reports on thousands of containers carrying humanitarian assistance for Afghanistan, which were the transit for Pakistan were held at the Karachi port. They were not allowed to go because Pakistan had raised the tariffs and duties and other issues. And also, Pakistan has said that they will not hold Afghanistan's case at the international level, which they were appealing initially that the recognition needs to come. The whole strains in the relationship and the fact that Pakistan is very unhappy about the fact that Taliban is not controlling the TTP is reflected into these policies.
Right.
But will these policies eventually lead to Taliban actually surrendering to the whole thing and saying, I don't see, it's not happening now. Even now we had just recently the attack which happened on the security forces in KPK, killing I think about 20 security personnel was military guys, was a big number. So there's no change in the TTP tactics despite the change in this. So relationship is bad right now. And you see a different pattern in Afghanistan where there's no recognition of the government, but there is engagement.
Right.
That's also a new normal for me. Engagement without recognition. So you have countries like China and Russia who have engaged big time. But the Chinese have the ambassador there, and the Taliban ambassador is there in China.
Achha.
Russians are obviously very engaged, and they are exporting large amount of oil, LPG, to Afghanistan because it's cheap for them. Russians also need this side going on. So you have countries which are engaging there. And the situation is just going on despite the fact that the Taliban are not ready to change their position on human rights,
Right.
on women education rights. We don't see that change, but the engagement is happening. And but Pakistan's situation is, but engagement is suddenly now very different in that context, which was the country which actually got them into power.
You could say that.
It's a TTP is a blowback of their own policies, right? Whatever the kind of policies which Pakistan has, believed and conducted through decades, I would say security situation is a clear blowback of their own policies.
So we spoke about a lot of issues with Pakistan. We spoke about their leadership issue, their financial. Even though it's not directly related, what would you say India should learn from the situations in Pakistan?
I don't think we have anything to learn, Shivam. Rather, Pakistan needs to learn. We can unlearn for sure that following policies of these sort have a blowback. I mean, these are not unlearned, but this is an example there. But I'm sure Pakistan, if kind of mends it ways, it really does some serious rethinking. They definitely have so much of learning from India. They also can leverage India's growth, India's whole economic profile. They can be a very significant player in South Asia at the moment, given the where they are placed in. But will that rethinking happen? I don't see it, unfortunately. I'm sorry to be that pessimistic, but I don't see it because I don't see the basics changing. The basics are the military institutions. The basics are the threat perception, the perceived threat perceptions in Pakistan, which have always been there, which is kind of a narrative in Pakistan that everything which India does is targeted against them. And I'll just quickly give a very small example of this whole threat perception and then the way they are projected in India, and which is also because of the ideological paradigm, the way it is structured there and followed. Some years back, a yoga center in Islamabad was burnt because it was a TV anchor said that it's against the national security interest of Pakistan. Now that yoga center was run by a Pakistani. It was through I think, a European NGO. But it had its linkages and learnings from an Indian guru. And that's why it was a threat to a nuclear weapon state. A yoga center. So everything, every acquisition that India has, everything that India does is, if you see that as a threat to Pakistan, or it's projected like that. And that I don't see changing.
Is it the ideological kind of threat that would...
Ideological is also there, which you will see more and more, like comparing the current regime with the Nazi government. This is a threat which is being projected. We are the most inclusive, much more inclusive country. If you see Pakistan, I mean, there is no comparison.
There's no comparison.
We have the same laws, same rights for everybody. You don't see that in Pakistan. I mean, there are multiple examples that we can get into. But learnings, I think, Pakistan needs to do that rethinking. I don't see much changing there. I don't see the national priorities changing much. See, you also have to see that Pakistan became so important for China because of the way it was. Because it considered itself an India's enemy number one.
Yeah.
That's why it became the Chinese ally. If it was all hunky-dory, why would the Chinese give them the nuclear weapons and the equipment? So there are many... many aspects to this whole, the dynamics are very strong, but changes in Pakistan, will the elections change it? Can a democratic leader change it? Very unlikely. Because how much of powers will he have to change the whole dynamics there? But yeah, Pakistan will try very hard to revive itself. We are seeing those developments. We can see their efforts to be now very close to the Gulf, the Muslim world, trying to revive the dimensions with the United States, trying to build up the Navy more to, because that's one aspect they need to build more we see them positioning their nuclear posture in a much more stronger way now. I mean, it's always been very different from ours. It's an unwritten doctrine, a first use doctrine. But they just tested the MERV missile. So, the projection is obviously strengthened much more with the full spectrum deterrence, and we can target any part of India. Plus, repeated statements, you would have seen it's come about the preparedness for war from Pakistan. I mean, who's fighting with you? Has India ever said that we were? In fact, all wars in the history, India, Pakistan, have been initiated by Pakistan. They've not initiated a single war. Parallel to that, they have fought the covert war in India.
Right.
In Kashmir, now Kashmir obviously became a difficult space for them. So we have Punjab, Khalistan. That's been very, very
leveraged.
Clearly, being done with the Pakistan support. And then you have the information and the propaganda war, which has been going on. But then which neighbor has Pakistan anyway settled with? I mean, it's Afghanistan or Iran or India. You don't have any of the settled neighbors when it comes to them, except China. Which is a different game altogether.
True. Yeah. Wow. This has been a very enlightening conversation for me to understand Pakistan better, and I'm sure for the audience as well.
Thank you so much.
Before we end this conversation, I ask my guests two personal questions. One is that since you read a lot of books, not Pakistan related, Afghanistan related, but since you read a lot, is there any particular book you wish you would have read earlier in life? Something that changed your thought process, your ideology, the person that you are today?
There have been many things into the making. So I won't give credit to one author or a book, but multiple things, multiple learnings.
One particular book that you have read and reread a few times.
Non-Pakistan related?
Whatever you want to share with the audience, whatever is.
You asked me a question which is going to now keep me, really going to get me to think. I think The Power of Now.
Power of Now.
That is one. Yeah, that is one book which I think I can read it a number of times, because your ability to now focus on today and not. I mean, in our profession, although we have to learn a lot from history, and it's very important to look back. But that should, I mean, that reflecting back should not be just becoming part of your own system when you're reflecting back to your own incidents again and again. So I think for me, Power of Now was an important
by Tolle, is it?
It was a good,
a great book.
Yeah, it was a good book. It's a good book. It's always there in my bag when I travel. So I like to read it off and on. Yeah.
Second question I would like to ask you is, what advice would you give to your younger self, like young Dr. Shalini Chawla?
So I feel that, one thing which the field I chose and I entered is a male-dominant field. Was, at least when I entered, it was a very male-dominant field. We now there are changes coming. So I think you follow your heart, which I did. Follow your passion. Don't worry too much about the returns at the beginning of the career, because this field you have returns a little later, but they are there. But determination and clear focus, very, very diligent reading, and not compromising that really benefits in terms of your growth in this field. That's about it, yeah.
Beautiful, ma'am, beautiful. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you.